Welcome to the Saturday Cup of Joe on Sunday. If this keeps happening, I may have to change it to Sunday Cup of Joe or Weekend Cup of Joe, but thank you for being here, watching and reading, and got my cup here. You don't need me to tell you life is short, and you don't need to lose someone to cancer to know that life is short. But someone asked me recently, what is the cliche that still rings true for you? And my answer was life is short. 4 years ago, I lost my best friend Brad to a rare and aggressive form of kidney cancer. He would want me to tell you that it was so rare they couldn't even classify it, even after his death. They tried to identify it, and they kind of said, "We've never seen anything like this." And I thought that that was true of Brad. It was one day we're playing golf, Labor Day, actually, 2016. We got the first tee time, 7 a.m., so we could be the first ones on the course and make the most of that day. And felt like the very next day we were sitting in the hospital eating Chipotle, and that was October 12th, 2016. And we were waiting on the final news, confirmation of his diagnosis. And, I think Brad sensed it. We feared it. And Brad moved on from this world 101 days later. And that was January 22nd, 2017. I've been trying to make sense of it ever since. I will tell you more about Brad, um, but to know me is to know Brad. We met towards the end of our freshman year in college. Our friendship was immediate and lasting. We would sit on the front steps of the dorm talking for hours. We'd sit on the benches that lined this long campus walk it runs down the center of Mary Washington. We're just walking around, talking and talking late nights. And we talked about committing to each other, sharing values, and investing in each other. One time in college, we're at this basement party, those red cup parties in college, and we're looking around the room at all of our friends partying. And Brad turned to me and said, "I love being human." I think that says it all. There were times when he and I lived together. When I got an internship in DC for the summer, I moved in with his family, and I shared a room with him and his twin brother Dave. And we lived apart at times too. In 2006, Brad moved to Detroit. Dana moved to Detroit. And even though there were miles between us, we found ways to talk, to stay connected, to visit. When Meredith and I got married, Brad was standing right next to my little brother. And when Brad and Dana got married on the rooftop of the Park Shelton here in Detroit, I performed the ceremony. And before his diagnosis, Brad's motto was live the life you want to live. We tried to make that happen for each other. We tried to make that happen for people in our lives. We shared everything. We shared pride, insecurities, fears, struggles, dreams. We talked about politics and history and love and music. Our late night conversations, our dinner conversations was the stuff of legends, or so we thought, at least. And once in our mid 20s, we decided to go big on this nice dinner, bottles of wine, long conversations, laughing. We kept getting louder and louder. Finally, Brad looked around the room and said to everyone, "Do these people have any idea who we think we are?" And that stuck. in in 2016, my family got the chance to move to Detroit, and we actually ended up 2 buildings away from Brad and Dana on the East Riverfront. It was unbelievable. I think our I think Meredith and Dana rolled their eyes thinking, "Here we go. We'll never see these two again." But Brad and I thought, "Okay, this is the start of our grown-up lives. Playing golf at 7 a.m., happy hours with Bell's Two Hearted Ale, Brad's favorite, and rooftop barbecues. It would be like this all the time," we thought. In fact, it was too good to be true. Another cliche. And in some ways, it was too good to be true. Um, but it wasn't all rooftop barbecues and happy hours. Despite being like brothers, we disagreed, or I guess being like brothers, we disagreed. Uh, and there was one fundamental thing. Brad said to build a career, to truly make a difference in this world, It has to, you have to trust the process, the work. That process has to be brick by brick. Whereas I subscribe to the big break, the idea that opportunities and big breaks present themselves, and it's up to you to recognize and jump. Life, as I thought, was a series of ever larger big breaks. Despite that disagreement, one thing we did together was game plan, game theory, everything, our careers, our lives, imagining every path, every iteration, every outcome. Long nights, too many drinks, little sleep fueled all of those conversations. And, Brad's family, eventually both our wives had to put up with it. And in fact, it was Brad's mom, Marzi, that helped me with my first real resume, helped me with my first interview, and land my first real job. And Brad and I would, you know, sit there with ambition in spades, just thinking and rethinking career choices and opportunities and how to change the world. His path to the mayor of Detroit or possibly even president, mine, lawyer, author, maybe his chief of staff someday. And our friendship was unlike anything I had experienced. It was a unique friendship. We built theories, we built mottos. Ultimately, we built our approach to life together. Um, if you haven't seen the movie or heard of the movie, Defending Your Life, it's this movie written, directed, and starring Albert Brooks with Meryl Streep. It's a delightful movie. Everyone should go watch it tonight. But spoiler alert, 30 years later, um, so I guess you can do that. Albert Brooks dies in a car accident and enters purgatory only to discover the actual purpose of being on Earth. And he has a hearing about his life with judges and attorneys on both sides. And instead of picking those big moments in his life, he finds out that his life will be judged on the moments where he didn't stand up for himself, where where someone challenged him or where he was taken advantage of or he didn't speak up for someone or he didn't speak up for justice. And the reason we love the movie was this idea about that defending who you are is defending these everyday choices, defending your choices against constant messages and influences to try to get you to doubt yourself. The point is courage to live your own life, the courage to stand up for your commitments. And often those threats come from inside your own mind, our own mind, the narrative assumptions about what other people might be thinking or are thinking. And what I've learned or tried and failed to do is to live courageously in those everyday things. Of course, do the right thing. Of course, do the right thing in those big moments. And this is like more personal than that. This is be able to stand up for yourself anytime. So Brad and I embraced being intentional about our careers and taking risks where and when. For example, Brad chose to leave Detroit. He had called Detroit his hometown. He had made a commitment to live and work here. He had committed his career to Detroit, and yet he needed to take a risk and leave for 2 years to attend graduate school at the Fletcher School in Tufts in Harvard so that he could come back and make a difference here. And that was a big decision. That was a big risk. In my life, not following the legal internship, legal clerkship path, and instead deciding to go right to work for companies, to go right into the business world. Um, these things were, we talked endlessly about these choices and the awareness and intent to go after what we wanted to do and why. It's easier said than done, another cliche. Um, and so, uh, also true. What turned into action for us was our willingness and desire to state our commitments out loud to each other. So Brad was the first man other than my father and brother to who I said, I love you. And it was a belief that we supported each other unconditionally. We created safety to do bold things. You can't lose me is a powerful statement. That's the type of friendship that gave me confidence to try risky things, a support system to know that failure didn't mean the end. That type of friendship is a privilege, and it's one we're all capable of simply by stating it and living it out. Brad was not the only support system in my life, so the reason I could recognize the significance of Brad's commitment to me was I had seen it before in my parents. My mother and father created an environment for my brother and I to flourish. Truly model parents. My parents were so generous and caring. My friends would continue to hang out at my house even after I had moved away to college and wasn't there, to watch football. They'd still bring the buffalo wings and the Code Red Mountain Dew because of what, my parents stood for and built and cared about everyone. My parents were still living in the house they built that I grew up in when we found out that my mother had ovarian cancer. It was a few months after Brad died. It was the summer of 2017. And my mom went through 2 rounds of chemo, and we thought it seemed like she had it beat until the summer of 2018 when it came back. And we found out a month or so before our family vacation to Ocean City, New Jersey in August. And her cancer was aggressive and fast. The reoccurrence took her away in less than 2 months, and she passed away on September 23rd, 2018. At her memorial service, I was looking for the way to explain my connection to my mom, and I'll tell you what I said then. She was the voice in my head. She guided me even when we were apart, and she's still in my head today, for better or worse. I hadn't fully dealt with Brad's death when I lost my mom. Perhaps I never fully will. Perhaps that's not the point. The point is not some moment where you're over it. The point's how I continue to live my life, my choices, my commitments, hope to go on, to go to work, to be present with my family. I have a 7-year-old daughter. She had a front row seat for, at 4 years old for Brad's death. Then she lost her grandmother at 5 years old. What do I tell her about life? That life is short? It's true, but it's not enough. What I tell her is that if you're in it, if you're truly in it with those you love, with those in your community, with your teammates, those you work with, then you're in it for the whole ride, the good and the bad. When my mom was scared to tell me that tell me about her cancer because I was still broken up over Brad's death, I told her, Mom, I signed up for this. I didn't just sign up for the vacations and the Christmas mornings. Those are amazing. But I want the whole thing. I signed up for the whole thing. And if I say I love being human at a party and truly mean it, it's because of the people and their stories and their experiences. The other truth is that some stories are longer than others. If you read an amazing book, you don't just want that book to be 1,000 pages longer for no reason. That would ruin it. Brad's life was unfairly short, but it was a full story, a good story. My mom and dad planned their entire lives together, to retire together, to grow old together. And she passed before that was possible. And there's grief there, healthy grief. There's also the embracing of a full story of a life lived and knowing I'm not skipping over anything just because it gets hard. Being all in, being part of it is helping your 35-year-old best friend in and out of the bathroom. It's sitting with your dad who lost his high school sweetheart in our living room. The hardest things are the things we value most. You think of education, mental health, spiritual walk, physical fitness. These things take time, dedication, they're hard. And so does our ability to live the life we want to live. To live courageously doesn't just happen. It's a commitment, it's an intention. Those commitments are often challenged. You know, Brad used to demand time with his people, his inner circle. It was hard for people to understand how he could be at a party and then take someone aside for 20 or 30 minutes to speak to them alone. It seemed rude, it seemed insensitive, but it was his way of carving out the space to be with that person for those moments, dedicating or creating a moment for that person. Once someone asked him to advise their startup, and it came with the compensation and recognition, and he said, I don't believe I can help your business. I just don't see what you see. And that was the right answer, but it's a hard one. And we wanted to try to express, or at least he wanted to try to express, truth to those commitments. And so when Brad got cancer, Brad, his wife Dana, and I created a podcast, and of course called it Defending Your Life, chronicling the experience and chronicling Brad's experience throughout cancer. And it took intention and discipline because we could have been doing other things, but Brad was insistent on sharing. And as a result, we have over 60 hours of conversations with Brad posted at defendingyourlife.us, all because we happened to move to Detroit 4 months before his diagnosis. And it's raw, it's not produced, but it is sharing what it was like and making sure that we captured as much as what Brad wanted to say. And I could make it sound like a coincidence, and that we happened to be here at this time. And certainly there were some really unexpected turns that brought us to Detroit, but we were ready to make the move when the opportunity presented itself. And being here in Detroit allowed Meredith and I to be with Brad and Dana throughout Brad's illness and to be with Dana ever since. And Brad was intentional about creating purpose and creating time for the people that he spent, you know, his moments with, his time with. He would, my mother, she was intentional about building a life and building a life for her sons. Birthdays, holidays, little things, big things. She was intentional about those moments and really creating that space for our family. These special people, these opportunities don't just happen. You probably heard some leader, some business book say, hope is not a strategy, right? Well, hope is what sparks the feeling and sparks the conversation. But spending the time and being intentional is what makes it happen. That's the strategy. Because I had Brad and I had my mom, I have a gift. It's that privilege. It's a privilege. The stakes are lower for me to subvert expectations, to take risks, to live courageously. I can risk embarrassment. I can risk being wrong. Partly to my privilege, the stakes for others, women, people of color, are different. I know this. I also know that, the approach to choices and my approach to living every day directly, living every day intentionally, means being less worried about what other people will think, less concerned about whether someone will treat me unfairly, in part because of Brad and my mom, my wife Meredith, and my dad and Dana and my little brother and my childhood friends, several of whom, I consider brothers and sisters who carried me through this life. They carried me through all of this. I'm not waiting for a big break, I guess is what I'm saying. I'm not waiting for a big break anymore. I am the big break, and so are you. There's no program, no book, no solution here. The more we see the world through a new lens, a lens of deeply flawed, deeply grieving people all just trying to make their own sense of the world, we're free of that judgment. We're free of their judgment and free of, encountering those self-imposed fears. In that space, being free and creating that space floods intention and being intentional with your choice. Choose your people, choose your commitment, choose your joy. It's not sexy. It's hard because it's a daily choice. Just like marriage, just like coming to work every day. The steps I've learned about these choices after hours and hours of talking to Brad and others about it. One, be honest with yourself. Live the life you really want to live. Two, be intentional. You have to create and protect that space, the space for something special to happen. And three, answer well. There will be challenges. It will be hard. Assume that going in. Rise to the occasion when you can. Putting distance, even a split second, between the question and the challenge in front of you, it will help you respond. Some people call it being present in the moment, but that really never resonated for me. That was always a little hard for me to get. What I like is a little flag in my mind. It's when an email, a question, a frustration arises, a quick breath or a moment to say, what's the most intentional way I can respond to this? What's my answer going to be? Will I answer well here? And when in doubt, say the extra thing. Be intentional about saying something when others would normally stop. And articulating it is hard. There's always an opportunity where you assume, I'll have another chance to explain this, or I'll say something tomorrow. Why? Don't you remember that awful cliche? Life is short, too short for games or waiting or cruelty. Be honest and courageous about the life you want to live. Be intentional about your choices, your friends, your family, about creating moments. And then, when the challenge presents itself, and it will, the question arises, answer well.